Hello and welcome back to the Stronghold. It's that time again. It's midweek, and I want you to play some Magic so that you can get 2 free rare or better ICRs, and oh yeah, there's a shot at some cosmetics as well if you're interested. This week's midweek Magic event, they want us to take a step back and slow down a little bit. So they are giving us an alchemy format in which your, and I quote, first land comes into play tapped. I'm honestly not sure if they mean the first land that you play in the game or the first land that you play each and every turn. But no matter, we have a deck that will take that potential disadvantage and turn it right around for us and give us an opportunity to make a winning deck despite the restrictions of this format. So stay tuned. But before we get into all that, my crack research team has recently pointed out that we are the only channel doing consistent and timely midweek Magic content. And by crack team, of course, I mean one comment from someone who had nothing at all to do with this monkey image. So be sure to subscribe right here at the Planeswalker Stronghold for all of your future midweek Magic needs, because we will be bringing you a deck list or strategy every single week. Now, what were we talking about this week? Oh, yeah, right. Guys and gals, the reality is, as budget players, we don't get a lot of opportunity to play 3-color decks or 4-color or 5-color or whatever. Mostly because the budget-friendly dual lands tend to be the common ones that come into play tapped. And that can be such a setback on tempo that it makes the deck very difficult to win with. To have any level of consistency. So you end up trying to trade off consistency for tempo, and it's a hard equation to balance and generally not very budget friendly. But this week, since we are looking at the slow play alchemy and our first land comes into play tapped anyway, it got me thinking about those common lands that come into play tapped. Since we're not really giving up as much tempo there, it makes it potentially worthwhile to consider a 3-color deck. And while we're not giving up a lot of tempo, I was wondering how else could we get value out of that land other than just the immediate mana. And of course, I went to a landfall mechanic, and thus I give you slow lands. It started with the base of our red-green landfall deck, and I started thinking about the alchemy format in general. And our World Sculptor got a little bit of a boost and is a landfall trigger, as well as Druid class got a little bit of a boost. And while it's not landfall per se, it might as well be. I stripped away most of the 1-drops because we're not going to be playing anything on turn 1. And hopefully we can play a comes into play tapped land on turn 1, and then on turn 2 start playing our 2-drops. I added in the Fearless Fledgling as an uncommon 1/1. It just keeps getting bigger every time you landfall. I think we're all familiar with Brushfire Elemental. I added in a 4th copy that should not be a hard acquisition for your collection at this point. We talked about Druid class. I'm running all 4 copies on that. Hopefully this is something you have been budgeting, the D&D inspired Adventures in the Forgotten Realms set. So hopefully this uncommon is not out of reach. If you can't run all 4, I think even 2 copies here is pretty significant. Lotus Cobra comes to us from our New Player Experience collection and helps us play a 3-color deck, particularly on turn 3, where we have a lot of options, and many of them are dual green dependent. We got the Jerboa, my favorite mouse other than possibly Mickey. And we've got the copies of Scaling Heights because it allows you to play an additional land for the turn, even if you haven't yet invested that mana into the Druid class. It's almost like having 7 copies of level 2 available to you. We're all familiar with the Mammoth. I have several copies on this. Hopefully you have a second copy other than the one from your new player experience. If not, there are plenty of good substitutes out there. Settle the Wilds is one of the uncommons from Alchemy. Allows you to seek a basic land card, of which we are running several, then seek a permanent card with a mana value equal to the number of lands you control. So with any hope, this seeks up a 4 or higher permanent for us, which we only have a few things here that could possibly be. So it really kind of narrows the field for us. And we can manipulate when we cast this and how many lands we have on. For instance, we could get a Vastwood Surge by playing it before we play our 5th land. Otherwise, it will definitely fetch us our Stampede or our World Sculptor at 6 mana. Now let's talk about lands, because we're not running a lot of basics here. We're only running 8, 3 plains, 1 mountain that is essentially there for us to fetch up if we need it for color fixing, and forest times 4. Now we do have 3 different combinations of pathways. I'm running 1 copy of each because I know you have those in your new player experience. Beyond that, we're running 4 copies of the Highland Forest because, hey, it comes into play tapped and we don't care. That is in addition to 2 copies of Alpine Meadow, the red-white, and Arctic Treeline, the green-white. Again, I'm running these mostly because I know you have them in your new player experience, not because there's any particular value in having the Snow Landfall. And of course, Evolving Wilds for the possibility of those double landfall turns. I took this deck for a spin, and I was consistently winning on turn 4 and turn 5, just running people over. Now, I believe that is 23 lands if I copied it right. But of course, that's not all the lands in the deck. We have a total of 30. We've got 3 copies of Spikefield Hazard because it's a decent little removal, or might be that last point of damage you need to do to the face to win the game. Security Shelter lets you protect one of your big beasties, especially if you are mid-attack, or if you really need to punch something through for damage. You can give it protection from the blockers that they have out there. Let's see here. Kazul's Fury is a nice way to take one of those like really pumped up elementals or mammoths, or even a last turn fledgling, and turn it into direct damage. Oh, and it's also a land if you need it. The ambush is another one of those removal options. Allows you to fight. Once you've pumped up your creature ridiculous with landfall, have it fight, clear the way, and then you can still swing with that creature as long as it didn't die. Vastwood Surge is search up 2 basic lands. We're only running we're only running 2 copies of this because we will probably draw some basics naturally. So the last thing you want to do is have a copy number 3 or number 4 of Surge in your hand and have no basic land you can go get. It's also very nice for one of those late turn finishers if you're able to kick it and put your additional counters on some creatures to deal additional combat damage when combat comes around. Stampede is again a land, which is so nice, but it's a one-shot bullet that we can search up with Settle the Wilds situationally, and it gives all of our creatures +2/+2. Again, just a nice way to potentially finish the game out of nowhere, maybe as early as turn 4 if we're using Settle the Wilds. And of course, the World Sculptor gives us a nice 0/1 blocking creature plant tokens. for each basic land. That just allows us to block for days and be much more aggressive. And whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, put 4 +1/+1 counters on target plant you control. So now one of those 0/1 chump blockers can actually become a threat. And that gives us a little bit of an elemental sub-theme with the brush fire. Not that that really comes into play anywhere, but it's kind of cool. Super budget deck, and of course there's lots of ways you can improve this with more pathways if you happen to have them, more mammoths. There's a number of good rares you could be running here, but this is a super budget friendly solution to this week's midweek Magic, and I hope you have as much fun playing it as I have had talking about it. So until next time, guys.
What's that? You didn't catch all that? Well, Matt would like you to know that any deck list applicable to this video can be found down in the doobly-doo. And hey, let's not forget, the whole reason to participate in these totally free midweek Magic events is the prize support is awesome. You get a rare for your first and second win, and then you get a random cosmetic for your third. How awesome is that? Alright, so with all that having been said, don't forget, smash the like button like Hulk would. And of course, comment and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And one last thing, myself, I'm coming to you from America, and I have noticed that about 1/3 of my viewership is coming from the US, and about 1/3 is coming from various countries. And there's about 1/3 of my viewership that is just getting lumped into other. So to let me know you got to the end of the video, throw me a comment down in there and let me know where you are watching from.